Yes, everybody, welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com. Or, of course, if you are watching on our rapidly growing YouTube channel, that's Tar Heel Illustrated. I'm THI staff writer Jacob Turner, and joining me for this podcast, our very own David Sisk, Director of Basketball Recruiting and an analyst for us here at Tar Heel Illustrated. David, starting off kind of a fun series here today. I'm calling it the Scouting Report. That's the title I'm throwing. I haven't even told AJ about that yet, so I hope he's cool with me rolling with that. I've seen who we're focused on today, G.G. Jackson, in person over the last couple of weeks. We're doing a handful of other Carolina commits and targets that, David, you got to see at the Nike EYBL Session 3 in Louisville this past weekend. So really looking forward to kind of diving into this series and talking about some big-time Carolina guys that have either already or already committed to North Carolina or definitely on the Tar Heels radar. Before we dive into this one, before we dive into G.G. Jackson, though, I want to give a quick shout-out to our sponsor for this podcast, The Rogue Shop. You guys have heard them. We absolutely love them. Check them out at rogueshop.com. Specialize in top-shelf family-grown hemp products, CBD, Delta 8, Delta 9, any kind of form you're looking for, tinctures, oils, candies, creams, whatever it may be. They've got you covered. Again, you can find the link to their website, rogueshop.com, below. Make sure you use that promo code TARHEELS10 to save. All right, David. Starting this series with G.G. Jackson. As you can tell, everybody can tell who's clicked on this one by the title. I got to see him at the Josh Level Classic in Greensboro, Dudley High School, a couple weeks ago. Shot an ISO on him. If you guys want to check that out, click on our YouTube channel, go to the playlist. We'll have ISO playlist over there where you can go check that one out. It should be pretty high up on our list on the YouTube channel anyway, in terms of recent uploads, but definitely go watch that one. I'll dive into kind of my impressions of GG from that event here in a second, but I want to kick it to you first. As a guy who's covering him, as a guy who's obviously covered his recruitment, done many a podcast on GG and what his commitment means for the Tar Heels, what kind of player is Carolina getting in G.G. Jackson? Because what I saw in Greensboro was a really, really impressive kid.
They're getting a guy that you would expect when he's ranked number one in the junior class. And even if future rankings come out and he's lower than that, he's still going to be in the top 2 or 3. At his size, 6'9", super athletic. And the one thing that you hear about him, if they're, and I wouldn't even say criticism, when I asked around about 22 and 23 reclass, people that really knew him and knew the game, and even his dad just said, look, he needs a year of maturity. And it's not really a physical maturity where he needs to put on weight or anything like that. It is, he just needs to fine tune his game. Mm-hmm. And I don't think if you look at him and you say, okay, there's a lot of things that he doesn't do well, I don't think that's the case. I just think he needs to put it all together and just tighten up everything he's got. If there is a question on him, it would be how consistent is he going to be able to take that outside jumper? That would be the only thing. But, 6'9", rebounder, ultra athletic, can defend, several positions on the floor, get to the rim, make spectacular, get out on the break, make those spectacular athletic plays that only, top 5, top 10 guys can make. So as he adds and tightens his game up and puts that all together, then you're looking at a guy who is, a next level guy, one of these big time 5-star players like North Carolina fans used to see.
Agreed. I mean, from seeing him in person, that was my first time seeing GG in person and just kind of following it to kind of lay out what this game was. So, because I kind of want people to understand this. It was essentially like an all-star game. Yeah. It was in remembrance of Josh Lovell, a kid that had passed away years ago. So it was kind of a little kind of fundraiser / all-star game, some players across North Carolina, 23, 24 class predominantly. And it was really fun to watch. Now, what stuck out the most to me with GG is just how good of an athlete he is for his size and, 6'9", around that 200-pound mark. But, first thing that stood out to me is, okay, he's taking the ball down the court. The ball handling ability of a guy that's 6'9", you don't really expect him to have that. But I think once you see that, I'm going in blind, seen some highlight tapes, but never seen him in person. That's the first thing that stands out because he doesn't handle the ball like a guy who's 6'9". He handles it. Is he somebody you want taking up the ball up the court every possession? No, but he's a guy that can definitely do that. He can take you off the dribble. He can create his own shot off of that. And that to me was kind of the first most impressive thing that stood out in terms of that, because you don't see that a lot with 6'9" guys. He's kind of your modern day power forward, a guy who can not only go down low defensively and offensively and do things, but he can step out on the perimeter offensively, take the ball down the court, take you off the dribble, and also defend guards out there, which was really impressive to see as well. But I think from about 5 minutes of watching him, and there was a lot of talent out there, it was so evident that he was the best player out there. And there's a reason that he's the number one player in the 2023 class, because just what he's able to do on the basketball court, like I said, are things that 6'9" guys at his age and his size and his athleticism are just not normally able to do. So you can definitely see why that was the case. That was the biggest thing that stood out. I mean, other things that kind of stood out to me was just the fanfare around him now. I mean, he must have stood around for 15, 20 minutes after the game and had taken pictures with fans and, just talking to people. And he was definitely the fan favorite there. And I talked to him after. You can see the interview on our YouTube channel on TarHeelIllustrated.com. And just how he talks about and how much things have changed since committing to North Carolina. That's kind of the biggest thing that stood out. He's just so much more widely recognized. And as he put it, he's taking a lot more photos now. And you definitely see why when you see his game. So those were the things that stood out to me. But David, from watching him in person, like I said, you watch him 5 minutes and you're like, yeah, this kid is, you see why he's the number one player in the 2023 class. He's that good.
Yeah, and he wasn't and let me say this, he wasn't in Louisville this weekend. I was at the EYBL event in Louisville. He wasn't there. That was a bummer. I was really looking forward to seeing him. But, he's at Team USA, which is a pretty good deal for him. But but Team CP3 is one of the better teams. I was asked going into that who I thought who could win the Peach Jam this year. And I said, CP3 was one of the handful of teams. It's pretty tight this year. It's not like last year where Team Final was clearly the best, but CP3 went into that. They were either 5-1 or 6-2. It's a 5-game schedule this week. And I'd have to go back. I know they lost 3. They may have lost a 4th game, but they had a losing rate. You're talking about one of the best teams in EYBL. And they lost to teams that you wouldn't think they would ever lose to, but they didn't have him. He made that big a difference, from a team who was first in their pool, and now they're 2 games back, after Louisville. So you can see what kind of difference maker that he is. And obviously, not only one of the best players in the country, one of the best players in the EYBL as well.
David, I know you talked about it earlier. This is the last thing. We're going to keep these relatively short. This is the last thing I want to kind of hit on before we wrap it up. When you look at Gigi's game, I know you talked about, there was, considering reclassifying at one point, decided not to do it. You mentioned that it was kind of, I think to quote you, refine his game a little bit. For me, seeing him in person, there's not necessarily anything that I think he needs to add to his game. I mean, obviously you can always continue to improve. You always continue to get better and refine those skills. When you look at his overall skill set, his ability to defend, his ability to do things, all over the court offensively, and just that versatility he brings with his ability to step out and hit shots and take guys off the dribble is just, obviously an X factor. When it comes to refining his game, is it really just a case for him over this next year of just kind of refining each of those parts? Do you think there's anything major in particular that he needs to add to his game before he gets to college? Or is it, like I said, just kind of refining those things?
Let me say one thing. At Josh level, obviously it was an all-star type game.
Yes.
Not a lot of defense played.
No.
Anybody's seen it in an NBA all-star game, that's what it is.
Absolutely. Yes, I'm glad you said that. Yes, it was.
Highlight type of deal. So you got to remember, when he gets into college, he's going to have to play against great coaches, great players, and it's going to play against scouting reports. And that's the big issue. So if there's a weakness or a hole, a defense will exploit that, and they'll make him play to his weakness and not his strength. I think the thing is just putting it all together. I think there are times when separately he can show different skills. Where it's not all fluid and going together. It's relying on one thing, one game, and one thing the next game. I think the big thing with him, obviously tightening up handles a little bit, but like I said, I think the big thing with him is how consistently he can step out and shoot that jump shot consistently.
Yeah.
How can he pull a defense out on the court? Because what they're going to do is if he can't, teams are going to gap him. And, I mean, you could kind of see, for example, like with Leaky, teams play off. Teams gap. They don't really get out pressure. They say, okay, you want this 18-foot jumper, you want this three-pointer, we'll let you have it. So, and not only do you have to make it, like I said, you have to make it consistently. He doesn't have to be Steph Curry, but it needs to be able, and I don't know, even out to three, but if you can step out on a long-range two and knock that down, I'm going to say, 35 to 40% of the time, let's say 40%, and then step out to the three and make that 35% of the time, then you're on to something. What he needs to be able to do, as good as explosive as he is and athletic as he is, and put the ball on the floor. He's long, he can swoop, he can finish, he's really good around the rim. He just has to be enough of a threat to where he forces that defender to come out and respect him and to play him honestly and play him straight up. Once he gets to that point, then he's going to be really hard to keep him getting to the rim one-on-one.
Definitely. Last thing, David, because I just remembered I wanted to hit on this too, size-wise. I've kind of seen – I was reading a few write-ups on him and, a few kind of scouting reports, for lack of a better word, on him, and a lot of people saying that, size-wise already, they think he's, NBA body. I think he's a big kid. I think he's a super athletic kid. I didn't necessarily get that impression from seeing it in person that his body is necessarily NBA ready when you look at the physicality of that. Now, he's a big kid, but I do think there's still a lot of room for him to fill in, which you expected from a guy who's still in high school and who will go to Carolina and be a part of a very regimented, strength and conditioning program. So do you think size-wise he's good now, or because like I said, I've seen a few reports on that, but I still think there's levels he can go before he gets to college over the next year that will make him that much better at the next level?
Well, he'll have to put on weight. He can't play at 100 pounds at that size. And not a whole lot, but the one thing he just – it's going to happen when from here on out, is just defining his body, being able to put on definition, to put on cut, to really strengthen it up. And that's going to be the big thing. It's going to be the eye test when you look at him. And that's the thing. He's not one of these guys that's either rail thin and needs to gain a ton of weight, or he's heavy, and he needs to get on a treadmill, every day. It's not that deal. But like I said, just refining we talk about refining his game, refining his body. And that's one thing that'll happen when he gets to North Carolina. I mean, you take a look exactly a year from now, on June the 1st, 2023, he's going to report to the University of North Carolina. And the season doesn't start to November. So he's got 5 months of training table, 5 months of weight room, 5 months of training, all of that, stretching. They're not going to miss a thing. And he'll look like a totally different kid in 5 months' time with that, because it's world class.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing him at Carolina. Like I said, I'm glad you made that little disclaimer, for lack of a better word, about it being a glorified all-star game, because I saw there's two things. After about the first 2 minutes, there was very little defense, but not only that, after the first 2 minutes, there was very little passing either. It's just a lot of 1v1 and whatnot, what you expect in those games. So I'd love to see him in person at like an AAU event. And like you said, I know it was a little bit of a disappointment that he wasn't up there, but USA calls, you got to go and take advantage of that one. Good place to wrap this one up, though. Yeah, go ahead.
We'll get to see it perhaps with Team USA, maybe, because a lot of these times with younger events, they just curb stomp everybody. And, it's not even competitive. They'll play Peru or somebody, and it's just one 50, 60-point win after another. This may be the case again here. So, but I think one thing that would help is obviously going up against the guys that he's going to go up against every day in practice for Team USA, and learning from the coaches. That's a huge deal. Players will lead there and tell you how much they developed. But like I said, I would really, just for our selfish reasons, for our sake, and watching him play in these things, I'd like to watch him play in some really tight events against good talent and kind of see what he does on that stage.
Absolutely. I would love to as well. Like I said, there's a lot of talent at Josh level. It's not that format, where it's that super high intensity back and forth, which in some ways is a little disappointing for a guy like me who, wants to see these guys compete at a high level. I know they're, it's more of a, have fun kind of
what
event.
they do, a lot of these FIBA events, it's like the America's deals. They're playing Central American teams and South American, whatever. It's not like when they're going to Europe and playing pros over there who in that situation since they were 12 years old. Yeah. So like I said, we'll see. He's going to improve from it, but like I said, I'd like to see it in a game where we can really see it against high level competition and see really where he's at.
Absolutely, man. Looking forward to seeing that, and I want to see that as well because, like I said, he's a big time player, and I know he's a guy that Carolina fans are going to fall in love with as soon as he hits campus. He's the real deal in a lot of different ways. But it's going to wrap this one up. I've been Jacob Turner. He's been David Sisk for this episode of our Scouting Report podcast, focusing on North Carolina 2023 commit Gigi Jackson. Hey, let's do this. If you're a Carolina fan watching this, which I assume you are, go ahead and hit that like below if you're excited about having Gigi on campus in about 365 days from now, as David mentioned a little bit earlier in this one. Quick shout out to Rogue Shop. Check them out, rogueshop.com. Awesome products. Also, can't speak highly enough of them. Use that promo code TARHEELS10 to save. Link in the description to head on over there for that. Like, share, subscribe, hit that notification bell as well. We'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks.